In 2016, this small house on South Madison Street in Darlington, Indiana, became the setting for one of the most haunting crimes the state had ever seen.
Brandy Worley sentenced for a chilling crime that horrified central Indiana.
On the night of November 17th, two children, 7-year-old Tyler and 3-year-old Charlie, were tucked into bed by their mother. Tyler had spent the day at school, still wearing the same clothes when he laid down to sleep. Charlie was curled up in her crib, wrapped in the same soft blanket she always clung to. Nothing about the evening seemed unusual, but by the next morning, both children were dead, and their killer never left the home. In fact, she made the call herself. Hours earlier, Brandy had walked into a local Walmart and purchased a knife. Then she went home, fed the kids dinner, and waited. Once everyone was asleep, she descended into methodical cruelty. She waited until Jason, her husband, had gone to sleep in the basement. Then she walked up the stairs with the knife hidden in her robe.
And where are the children at?
In my daughter's room, on the floor.
In your daughter's room on the floor? Okay. What's your phone number, Brandy? And what caused you to do this today?
My husband wanted a divorce and wanted to take my kid. I won't let him have my kid.
Okay, and how old are your children?
7 and 3.
So the big question is, why would a mother do this just because of a divorce? And why with such calm detachment? To answer that question, let's go back to a time when everything looked picture perfect. No crime scene. Just a quiet street in Darlington, Indiana, where the Worley family lived in a simple home on South Madison Street. Darlington wasn't the kind of place where tragedy was expected. Less than 900 people, tucked just 40 minutes from Indianapolis, where everyone waved hello, and nothing bad ever seemed to happen. Inside that home were 30-year-old Brandy, her husband Jason, 31, and their 2 children, 7-year-old Tyler Daniel Clinton Worley, and his little sister, 3-year-old Charlie Rose Jean Worley. From the outside, they were the definition of a happy young family. The kind people in town saw at school events and library visits. Smiling, laughing, normal. Tyler was the kind of kid every teacher loved. Born on September 17, 2009, he had just started first grade at Sugar Creek Elementary School. He was already obsessed with sports: basketball, football, soccer, baseball. If it involved running and a ball, Tyler wanted in. But he wasn't just athletic. He was thoughtful. He wanted to work with computers when he grew up, just like his dad. Jason once said Tyler was the kind of boy who could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with 20 new friends. On the other hand, Charlie was born on September 26, 2013. At just 3 years old, she had a busier schedule than most adults. Preschool at the Wilson Early Learning Center, dance classes, basketball camp, and weekly trips to the local library for story time. She loved dressing up, especially when someone braided her hair. Jason said she was a ball of light in a tutu, always on the go, always smiling. Now, Brandy and Jason had met in 2007, fell in love quickly, and got married in 2009, the same year Tyler was born. Jason worked as a software engineer, and Brandy stayed home to raise the kids. To their neighbors, the Worleys seemed completely normal. They attended school events, helped with dance rehearsals, and played in the yard. There were no fights in public, no calls to police, no signs that the perfect picture was slowly tearing at the edges. In fact, the day before the murders, November 16, 2016, had been nothing short of ordinary. It was a Thursday. Tyler had gone to school. Charlie had a dance performance that evening, and the whole family showed up to cheer her on. Afterward, they drove home, had dinner together, and wound down like they always did. However, later that night, Brandy made a quick trip to Walmart to buy pipe cleaners for one of Tyler's school projects. The Walmart was just 11 minutes away, in Crawfordsville. Brandy went alone. No one suspected that her shopping trip wasn't just for craft supplies. When she returned, the kids were winding down for bed. Brandy and Jason played with them for a while. Then Jason helped them settle into their blankets for the night. Tyler curled into his Spider-Man bedding. Charlie snuggled into her crib with her favorite blanket. But then Brandy said something strange. She asked Jason if he wanted to sleep on the couch, but he declined. He preferred to go down to the basement, where he'd been sleeping recently. And this raises a question many people would later ask. Why wasn't Jason sleeping beside his wife? The truth is, like many couples, Brandy and Jason had been struggling. Arguments had become more frequent. But this wasn't just about bickering or stress. The problems ran deeper. In fact, Jason had just filed for divorce the day before. They had been together for 9 years, married for 7. But Jason had finally reached his breaking point. He believed Brandy had been cheating on him with their neighbor, and he had proof, painful, undeniable proof. This wasn't just suspicion. This was betrayal confirmed through texts, photos, and late-night messages she thought he'd never see. Jason had noticed that Brandy became overly protective of her phone. She changed her password and kept it close. So, using his skills as a software engineer, he installed monitoring software that let him view her messages. What he discovered crushed him. Brandy had been flirting and texting their 51-year-old neighbor, a man Jason thought was just a friend. One message stood out. "I'm all covered in frosting. Want to lick it off?" Jason wanted to believe it was a joke, just Brandy's twisted sense of humor. But soon, he saw more. Graphic messages, Snapchats sent from the bathroom at work, plans to meet up while Jason was away. He read them all. He watched their affair unfold in real time. The emotional damage was overwhelming that Jason turned to the internet for help. On Reddit, under the username Jason in Hell, he shared his pain. His post, titled, "I'm having a hard time coping with my wife cheating on me with our neighbor," went viral. In it, he detailed the betrayal, how Brandy denied everything until he showed her the evidence. Even then, she minimized it, claimed it was just a mistake, that it never went all the way, that it was his fault for being too busy at work. And then she threatened him. If he left her, she said, he'd never see his kids again. She threatened to use his past mental health history, a self-harm attempt in high school, as ammunition in court. She said she'd prove him unfit. Jason was heartbroken, scared, and stuck. He didn't want to lose his kids, so he stayed. For a while. But the resentment kept building. Eventually, he realized he couldn't pretend anymore. He didn't want his children growing up in a house filled with secrets and tension. So he decided to leave. And that's when things took a dark, irreversible turn. Jason's next Reddit post said it all. Brandy refused counseling, refused to change. He had finally contacted an attorney. He said he was ready to get his kids out, to start over. He thanked strangers online for giving him the courage. But no one, not Jason, not anyone reading those posts, could have imagined what would happen next. Because the very next morning, his children were gone.
Now
Records show they found that 7-year-old Tyler and 3-year-old Charlie had deep cuts on their throats and that a combat-style knife was found in her daughter's bedroom. Police say Worley told them her husband was divorcing her and wanted custody of their children. They also say she specifically told them she did not want him to take the kids. Her husband tells police Worley yelled, "Now you can't take the kids from me," as he came upstairs to find the children.
After the murders, a press conference was held. There was outrage, confusion, shock. The Montgomery County Sheriff addressed the public with trembling words.
While the dispatcher kept Worley on the telephone, the first deputy arrived at the residence and confirmed that 2 children were in fact deceased at 4:43 a.m.
Now, Brandy had been involved in a minor car accident once, but beyond that, nothing to prepare anyone for this. Jason returned to Reddit after the killings, writing again in grief. He said he felt like he had failed to protect his children. He shared how he returned to the house after the crime scene was cleaned, but he swore he could still smell the blood in Charlie's room. He wasn't sure if it was real or just trauma clinging to his senses. Either way, he knew he couldn't stay there. He packed his things and left. Jason questioned everything. Why had Brandy asked him to sleep on the couch that night? Did she plan to kill him too? Could he have saved the kids if he'd stayed upstairs? Would things be different if he'd left earlier? Or if he'd stayed married? These are the kinds of questions that torment a father who did everything he thought he could, but still lost everything. "I had one job," Jason later wrote. "A father's job is to protect his children, and I failed." He set up a GoFundMe to help with the funeral expenses. The campaign was shared by YouTuber Philip DeFranco, who discovered Jason's story on Reddit and used his massive platform to bring attention to the tragedy. Thanks to the support of viewers and readers across the internet, the fund raised enough to give Tyler and Charlie the farewell they deserved. But no amount of money could undo what had been done, and no amount of sympathy could answer the one question that still echoes through every post, every headline, every courtroom. Why? In a town as small and close-knit as Darlington, where everyone knew each other by name, grief spread like wildfire. Within days, the town organized a candlelight vigil at the local church. People came not just to mourn, but to try to understand how something so unthinkable had happened right in their midst. There weren't enough chairs. It was standing room only. 5 days after the murders, the funeral for Tyler and Charlie was held at the Darlington Community Center. Their tiny caskets were surrounded by flowers, stuffed animals, and handwritten letters. The children's mother, the woman who had taken their lives, was not there. But Jason was, and so was nearly everyone else in Darlington. Hundreds showed up, some in tears, others simply silent. A few brought candles, many brought memories, and every single one of them carried heartbreak. The Worley family released a statement during the funeral, saying, "We are shocked and saddened by the sudden loss of our beloved Tyler and Charlie. They meant the world to our family, and words cannot describe our feelings of devastation. We are thankful for the outpouring of support from our friends, family, and the community. We will grieve forever the loss of our precious little boy and girl." However, the case was far from over. 11 days after the murders, Brandy was finally released from the hospital. Her neck wound had healed enough, but she wasn't walking out to freedom. The moment she was stable enough to move, she was transferred directly to the Montgomery County Jail and charged with 2 counts of murder. Her bail was denied. Her defense attorney, Mark Inman, met with her shortly after. He said that in their first few meetings, Brandy showed emotion. She cried. But after that, something changed. She shut down. No more emotion, no explanations, just a blank stare. She refused to speak about what happened. Inman said he couldn't find any clear-cut reason for the murders, and Brandy wasn't offering one. Her behavior puzzled even her own legal team. Some believed it was trauma, others thought it was coldness. The defense hinted they might pursue an insanity plea, but first, Brandy had to undergo a full psychiatric evaluation. The results weren't made public at the time, but prosecutors were already building a case that would dismantle any claim of mental instability. In fact, the more investigators dug, the more premeditated the crime looked. They discovered that on November 15th, 2 days before the murders, Brandy had learned Jason was moving forward with divorce. He had contacted an attorney. He was ready to go, and she knew it. In the days leading to the murder, she kept things deceptively normal. She took the kids out with her mother. Jason came home from work, and the family went to Charlie's dance recital that evening. But what Brandy did next exposed her true intentions. That night, she told Jason she needed to buy pipe cleaners for a school project. But she lied. That trip to Walmart was not about craft supplies. It was a cover. Surveillance footage and receipts revealed that she had bought a Ka-bar combat knife, the kind used by the United States Marine Corps. Not a kitchen knife. Not something from a dollar aisle. A weapon designed for combat. When she came home, she hid the knife in Tyler's room. Jason tucked the kids into bed. He went downstairs to the basement. The house went quiet. And then, Brandy made her move. She walked into Tyler's room, took out the knife, and woke him up gently. Not with fear, not with rage, but with a lie. She asked him if he wanted to have a sleepover in his little sister's room. Being 7 years old, Tyler was probably excited. A midweek sleepover meant breaking the rules. Something fun, something special. He had no idea what was coming. Brandy led Tyler into Charlie's room, and once both children were together, she began to stab her son first. He likely screamed, maybe tried to run. But Charlie, only 3, heard something and asked what was happening. Brandy told her to go back to sleep. She did. She trusted her mother. Once Tyler was gone, Brandy turned the knife on Charlie. The details of the attack were described as overkill by the prosecution. There was no mercy, no hesitation, just brutality. When it was over, Brandy stabbed herself in the neck, then calmly called 911 and told the dispatcher what she had done. Before the case ever reached trial, Brandy changed her plea to guilty. There would be no courtroom drama, no jury to convince. The only thing left was sentencing and a chance for Jason to speak. The court asked Jason what kind of sentence he believed Brandy should get. He didn't give a long statement. He didn't cry. He just said, "I never want to see her again. Out of sight, out of mind." The judge, Harry Siamas, asked Brandy directly if she had anything to say, any explanation, any apology. She said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't even look at Jason, and the court took that silence as her final act of cruelty. Brandy Worley was sentenced to 65 years for the murder of Charlie and 55 years for Tyler. 120 years total. No possibility of parole. The sentences would run consecutively at Rockville Correctional Facility. Judge Siamas said, "Everyone wants to know why. Why would a mother kill her children? But sometimes there is no explanation. Sometimes darkness exists in the world, and it finds its way into people's hearts." After the trial, Jason said that hearing Brandy talk about the murders on the 911 call and later to police, like she was describing a grocery list, was the most painful part of it all. She never showed any emotion. never even seemed to understand what she'd done. He said, "I just want to move forward. I want to protect the memory of my kids." As of 2025, Brandy Worley remains locked away inside the cold, gray walls of the Indiana Women's Prison. She's not a mother anymore, not a wife, not even a name that brings comfort to anyone. She's a number, a ghost of the woman who once rocked her children to sleep and later stole their last breaths. Inmates who've crossed paths with her say she barely speaks. She doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She simply exists, quiet, unemotional, like she's detached from the reality of what she did. She eats when she's told, moves when she's told, and when her name is called for mandatory therapy or evaluations, she shows up and offers almost nothing. Her most recent psychiatric evaluation diagnosed her with major depressive disorder, but to the outside world, that doesn't matter anymore. No diagnosis can explain away what she did. No label can soften the fact that she murdered her 2 children with a knife she bought for that very purpose. The world didn't need a psychological report to know that something inside Brandy was broken far beyond repair. Meanwhile, Jason Worley, the man Brandy tried to emotionally destroy before physically destroying their family, is still standing. He's older now, in his early 40s. He moved away from Darlington long ago and started over in a different city. He remarried. He has more children. And although photos show a man smiling beside his new family, those closest to him say grief still lives in his eyes, just below the surface. Jason never became a public figure. He never gave lengthy interviews or tried to spin his story for attention. He just kept living, quietly, day by day. But online, in the same Reddit threads where he once opened up about Brandy's betrayal, he's made a few rare appearances. In one heartbreaking post, he admitted that he still tortures himself over that night. Over the moment, Brandy asked him to sleep on the couch, and he chose the basement instead. He wonders if that was her test, if she wanted him upstairs to stop her, or worse, if she wanted to kill him too. He'll never know. But the part that breaks people the most isn't what happened. It's what should have happened instead. If that night had gone differently, if Brandy had just left like most people do during a divorce, Tyler and Charlie would still be alive. Tyler would be 15 now. He'd be in high school, probably obsessed with football and video games, maybe teaching himself how to code. He was sharp, curious, always asking how things worked. Jason used to say Tyler could charm anyone. He'd make friends at the grocery store. He had that glow, that natural warmth you can't teach. Charlie would be 11. She'd be in middle school, maybe still wearing sparkly sneakers and asking for glitter in her hair. She loved dance class, loved story time. She had this way of making people smile without saying a word. She was the kind of child who sang to herself when no one was watching and always wanted to help with the dishes, even when she wasn't tall enough to reach the sink. But instead of growing up, their names are carved in stone. Their birthdays are remembered with candles and tears, not balloons and laughter. The rooms that once echoed with their voices are silent now. Photos are all that remain. Pictures frozen in time of 2 kids who never had the chance to become who they were meant to be. The Reddit community that once stood by Jason, offering advice, cheering him on as he tried to leave a toxic marriage, was devastated when the truth came out. They hadn't just followed a story about infidelity, they had watched, unknowingly, as a double homicide unfolded in real time. Some users felt guilty. Some wondered if encouraging Jason to leave had pushed Brandy too far. But none of this was their fault. and it wasn't Jason's either. The blame rests on Brandy Worley alone. Now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think could have happened if Jason had slept on the couch that night instead of the basement? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.